everyone. Seems like we have already quite a good number of attendees that have joined. Firstly, thank you for taking out time for attending yet another exciting HR Easily webinar series. I'm Bhavish here, part from HR Easily's team, who would be your moderator for today's afternoon's exciting panel. The topic going to be spoken of would cover around the transition to a hybrid working model here as well. Quite interesting, the topic. I mean, the question in everyone's mind, are hybrid working environments really here to stay? And how frequently will staff actually work remotely after these uncertain times? Today's webinar is going to be very much casual, a sort of fireside chat, you could say, to keep it interesting for everyone here. Now, without further ado, let me quickly introduce our panel of speakers for today's afternoon session. First up, we have Ms. Bianca Kongsier from Mazars in Singapore. Bianca here is the HR and payroll outsourcing manager for Mazars in Singapore. With more than 6 years of experience in providing outsourced HR and payroll services, she's quite familiar with local employment legislations and compliance. Bianca also manages an international client portfolio, providing a broad spectrum of payroll and HR services. Hello, Bianca. How are you?
Hi, thank you, Bhavish. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you as well. All right, and our second speaker for today's afternoon's panel is Mr. Ho Seng Chi, Chief Work and Culture Officer at Justco. Those of you that haven't heard about Justco, they are Asia's Pacific leading co-working company. Seng Chi oversees the workspace, human resources, and legal functions of the business. As a member of Justco's executive committee, Seng Chi is also responsible for driving a strong and positive workplace culture, as well as creating a quality experience for both Justco's employees and members. Lastly, our last speaker for today's panel is Louis Yeo, who serves as a strategic partnership manager for HR Easily, one of fastest growing HR SaaS companies in Asia Pacific. Louis' responsibilities includes prospecting channel opportunities, executing partnership launches, as well as driving revenue. Good afternoon, Seng Chi and Louis. Great to have both of you here today as well.
Thank you, Bhavesh.
All right, for audience that have just joined, since today's webinar is going to be a very casual chat, we would be picking up questions from yourselves. So please feel free to type in your questions directed at our panel at the Q&A button below of your screen. And we'll be picking up questions from yourselves as well. All right then, so let's quickly begin today's afternoon session. Without further ado, we already have some great questions lined up by some of our previous audience as well. And it would be great to get thoughts about it from Bianca, Seng Chi, and Louis as well. I think we can all agree that 2020 has changed the way that we all work. But in your thoughts and opinion, what has been one of the most crucial changes in your organization? And how have you dealt with some of these changes as well? I think we'd like to start with Seng Chi. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Ho?
First of all, please stop calling me Mr. Ho. You should call me Seng Chi like everybody else does. That's a great question, Bhavesh. I think as we end 2020, this looks like a very bizarre year because we started 2020 is business as usual with great plans for growth like many other small businesses across Asia Pacific. And then suddenly when we came to March, it was literally like running into a wall. Everything just hit complete stop. Not only that, everybody was pushed out of the office and into a new environment called work from home. So many companies were not ready. I must confess that for Justco, we were not 100% ready. But we struggle, we stumble, we try to figure things out from March until about June. Then it entered a stabilization phase. And as we are ending the year, I sense that things are coming back to normal and people are re-emerging from their homes and their remote work locations. So I think looking ahead to 2021, I'm very optimistic that things will start to pick up for a lot of businesses, including ours.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And from yourself, Bianca, I mean, since you manage quite a huge client portfolio as well, I think we can all agree it's obviously changed some of the way we work. What are some of the changes that you have seen, and how have you dealt with these changes as well?
I think internally for Mazars, we were quite lucky that we had the opportunity to implement work from home a few years ago. But even though, it's been a few years of us remote working, we were never fully convinced that we could do 5 days work from home and still be productive and efficient. But I think because circuit breaker really forced us to attempt and to do it. Yeah, and I think we were convinced and proven that we could actually work from home. So now as we enter working towards a post-COVID phase, we are looking at what would be the right balance for us. How many days should we work from home? And so what we did was we conducted an internal HR survey where we asked our employees and our talents like what their opinions are, and I think we come to a conclusion that we will work towards 50% work from home. So yeah, we're working towards that now.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I think between ourselves as well, HReasily, what are your thoughts, Louis? I mean, so far we've been working from home, the changes that you have seen.
So I think HReasily, fortunately for us, we were at the core, we're a tech company. So we were fortunate that a number of our employees, probably up to half of them, were very well versed in remote working. So for us, the adapting of it wasn't, I suppose, as painful as one might think, because we had the experience and the opportunity to share best practices amongst those who've been working remotely for the last number of years, or with those who are working on site.
Yes, correct. I think we can all agree most of our companies here have implemented strict work from home policies as well, inclusive HReasily, Mazars, and Justco. But obviously with new changes, new challenges arise as well. I mean, if I would come ask you, Seng-Chi, managing 100 to 500 remote employees across large geography must be a tedious task. What are some of the existing challenges and how have you dealt with them considering remote working?
Yeah, it is challenging. And I come back to what Louis just stated. I always admire companies who are started digital first. So obviously, Justco being a co-working company, we're not a digital first company because our entire business rests on having offices that people need. So I must confess that we're not a digital company. So when I look at the way we manage our staff, we still have a large proportion of operating staff at the centers at each of our 42 co-working locations that need to be managed. And as long as the centers remain open, they have to be physically on site. So there's a limit to which we can push employee management and engagement into the digital space. But having said all of that, and as Bianca mentioned, we have been experimenting with remote working because remote working and flexibility is a very key part of our business as well. And I think I'm a firm believer that if we want complete flexibility in employee empowerment and engagement via remote working, work from home, work in the office, the first thing that we have to solve is performance management. Everybody has to understand what their job is, what the company's goal is, how each employee's part fits within the entire puzzle. So that has to be fixed, that has to be resolved first and foremost. Once you get the output and the expectations clear, then it becomes easier to disregard where you're working from.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more as well. Do you share the same views as well, Bianca?
Yeah, I think Seng-Chi brought up a very interesting point about performance management. I think, yes, performance management and understanding the competencies, and employees need to know what is expected of them before we can actually achieve a very efficient work from home policy. I think for us at Mazars, or even as a manager, one of the key challenges that I faced was actually knowing whether the team is coping well at home or not. Mental well-being is such a huge topic this year. And I think just in office, you can tell if someone is, like from their facial expression, from their body language, whether they need assistance, like should I talk to them, that sort of thing. It just came very naturally. But when we started working from home, you feel more disconnected and disengaged. So just the way we communicate is something that we had to intentionally, do and focus on. So like, had to have our like immediate supervisors to just check in on employees regularly.
Yeah. I think mental well-being is quite a trending topic considering many companies have worked from home. Speaking of which, I mean, keeping employees always engaged and motivated, especially during uncertain times and working from home, what do you think are some of the best strategies that companies can adopt to ensure the employees actually remain committed during uncertain times? I think we'll start off with yourself, Bianca.
Okay, I think during uncertain times, I think what people want is really assurance. So for me personally, I feel that when you're in uncertain times, you will feel disconnected, you may feel disengaged, even if it's just working remotely and you feel uncertain about your job, etc. But to avoid speculation, I think it's important for companies to actually to communicate regularly and to give regular updates. Yeah, and for us, communication is like one-on-one sessions. So previously they could be very formal, feedback, delivering feedback. But for now, we have moved towards very informal sessions. So we talk more about how they are coping, the challenges that they face, what can we do to help, or it just make them feel more at ease. Yeah. So, and I also think it's very important to recognize employees' efforts. Yeah, in order for them to feel valued and engaged in the organization. So, like we mentioned about performance management earlier, I think it's important that like the KPIs and the competencies that we set are relevant. Yeah, and employees need to know what is expected of them. Yeah, and so that's how they can deliver, and they feel what they're doing actually makes an impact to the organization.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what about yourself, Luis? HReasily has over 100 employees spread across 8 countries. How do you think, or what are some practices that you have implemented to ensure motivation as well as engagement?
I think I would like to just touch back on the point that Bianca provided, right? So it's all about providing a safe psychological environment for employees, because it is a very uncertain time. People have families, they have kids, and they're fearful of their jobs, right? Over the last few months. So what you don't want is you don't want to have a workforce that's fearful of their jobs, job security. So they could become disengaged, fearful, and the worst case scenario is resentful, because if they don't have a clear picture of what's ahead of them, that's something that could potentially be very damaging for your company. So it's not about compromising performance or whatnot. It's like Bianca said, you have to set clear expectations for people and then allow them to make mistakes, because only through making mistakes in this learning and transitional period that everyone went through, that's how you can actually grow and become stronger overall. So.
Yeah, I think I share the same view as well. How about yourself, Sengchi? I mean, across 42 centers, obviously there must be some ways that you have implemented to remain your employees engaged.
Yeah, I think ironically, or maybe as a natural consequence of remote working, the engagement has to be more planned, and the engagement has to take on a better rhythm, if you will, right? It's like, for example, a 30-minute call every week, or 15-minute catch-up session every twice a week or every week. So you have to consciously create those opportunities to engage. Whereas if you were physically in the office, you might run into each other, you might have a chat, you might ask each other about whatever Netflix program you're watching or following for the week. You will not have that kind of opportunity anymore, because you don't have those encounters anymore in the office. So you have to create the actual interaction space virtually. And that means slotting in appointments consciously. But those kinds of appointments lose their casual and their warmth, simply because they are engineered appointments. So you don't want that friendship to be, in a way, too contrived, right? That, this is a 30-minute session where we have to get online and try to get to know each other. It becomes very, very contrived and very, very artificial. So the way I think leaders need to engage now is to use those kinds of appointments to find openings, to find out more about the employee that they're engaging with, more about their teammates. And I think working from home gives you a whole series of opportunities to do that, because when you're having a conference call, your kid could be running behind you, right? Your wife could be having another conference call next to you, and then you're having this conversation. So I think leaders need to pick up on those cues in order to find out what is the 360 environment that the employee is surviving in. What does the apartment or the home look like? Who else is in that space with the employee? I think throwing us into the employee's home opens up all these possibilities which we never had. So we need to be smart about it, need to be able to use those opportunities to get to know our teams a lot better and to build those stronger relationships.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree on that. Being and watching someone wife move in the background, or perhaps some dogs comes in the scene, seems to open a lot more on the employee's well-being as well. I think Bianca spoke about performance management systems in place and managing employees remotely. I think we'd like to touch base a bit more on that. Considering a lot of employees are working from home, obviously some of us have implemented HR systems or performance management softwares, so to speak. I think we'll go with Bianca first. Has this actually helped manage your workforce? And if yes, how has it? How crucial do you see yourself implementing the right software as well?
I think performance management software is a great tool to track employees' performance and progress. And it helps to provide guidelines as to which areas we need to focus on when we evaluate employees' performance. And as an employee, I will know exactly what is expected of me and my job. But the problem I feel that with performance management software is just a tool that still needs to be relevant competencies and relevant KPIs that I'm benchmarking against. So it needs to be something that I feel is achievable, something that I will want to work towards. If not, it will be very demotivating and will not serve its purpose. Yeah, so for me, when we follow a strict competency matrix, that helps us determine what are the development gaps in, like, the employee has to focus on, and we have to help the employee kind of build the performance improvement plan. So in areas that we want to develop. But when we think about performance improvement plan, it's not purely about the areas that we need to develop at work. There's a lot of factors that can affect performance. And I think it's important for that human interaction, for the supervisors to speak to them and understand the challenges that they are facing in order to develop like a strong, effective performance plan, improvement plan. And yeah, so I think having that human interaction is key for a performance like management system to actually work.
Yeah, I think same thing would probably what Seng Chi mentioned. Quick one-on-one sessions, regular updates with the employees is still crucial, the human interaction as well. Speaking of Justco, Seng Chi, I understand initially you mentioned that you're not so digitized, and after the COVID work from home, obviously you would have stepped up your game. What are some of the digitizing methods or systems that probably implemented back at Justco?
I think if you're talking about just the last 6 to 9 months as a result of COVID lockdown, I think one very tangible thing that we've moved completely online are our approvals for payments and invoices, for example. It used to be very paper-based because we are in the process of rolling out an ERP system. So we don't have that yet. So a lot of the approvals that we do is still currently on paper. So what we did was we leverage on whatever solutions that we have, and we just use Microsoft suite of tools to move all of that online. So now whenever an approval or invoice payment is required, it happens online. Everybody's on the same platform. You can see at what point the approval is at. So that's a very tangible benefit. A second benefit, of course, is to go completely paperless, because you cannot come into the office to retrieve this piece of paper or that paper. And everything has been moved to cloud storage, and again, on our Microsoft OneDrive system. So those are the two immediate, I would say, transformations that we have undertaken just from the last 6 to 12 months, because we were forced into it. We had no choice.
Yeah, I think digitizing happens throughout all companies. What about yourself, Louis? I mean, HReasily being an HR platform, what are your views on digitizing HR tools or any other systems?
I think it comes as no surprise, right, that I support this movement, of moving to a digital ecosystem or ERP, whatever may suit the specific requirements that your company may have, and I think this sweep has like Seng Chi has said, has forced a lot of companies to really consider how they can go about digitalizing their business processes. I mean, back in October in Singapore, there was a survey that came out that actually 80% of SMEs are placed, strategically placed to implement digital solutions. So I think the importance of being able to access everything on the cloud can't be understated, to be honest. Like, for example, myself, I felt that there was a need to implement more of a project management tool, for example, like Monday.com or Asana or whatever the case may be, because I felt that visibility of the activities of my team is not that transparent anymore. So a project management tool for me to be able to track statuses, benchmarks has been exceptionally useful over the last 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think across the panel, we can agree digitizing has been quite something, especially this year. Speaking of working from home, obviously employees are used to now working from home. I would say some of them would be rather reluctant to going back to the office, working from the office as well. Do you think it will be necessary for employees to actually return to the office in the future? I think I'll go with Seng-Chi on this one, since I understand that Justco has some exciting plans on how to get employees back to the office.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm going to provide a very self-serving answer, which is that we do not believe the office is dead. We always believe that there's a need for some type of office. So then the question becomes, what type of office? And that depends on the activity that you're performing. So when you think about work, there are principally two types of activities. One is solo work. The second one is teamwork, right? So if you're doing solo work, then you also need a conducive environment for solo work. You could be doing quiet work, deep thinking, and noisy environments are not suitable. So not everybody's home is wired for solo work, even when you talk about just working by yourself. Now, what a lot of employees like to say, I can do my work from anywhere. I can work remotely. I know what I'm supposed to deliver. That's fine. I think that type of thinking is probably useful depending on the maturity of the company. If you're a very stable, very mature, very big company with standard operating processes which are very established, everybody knows what to do, very experienced employees, highly qualified people, etc., I think you can probably run very well with 60 to 70% of the time with employees working remotely. But if you're a smaller or a medium enterprise trying to scale up very quickly and hiring people who are fresh and unknown to the company, then I think there are limitations to just working from home, working remotely without any physical interaction with the employees. Because just to onboard someone that you do not know, and someone who might be relatively junior and may not be experienced in the field of work that you're in, that particular task alone is very challenging when you are doing it remotely, because you have to show the employee what are the systems you're running, provide the employee with training, understand who are their teammates, what are each other's preferences regarding working schedules, etc. So all of those things are very, very challenging for a young company.
Yeah, I think I agree more. Being a tenant of Justco ourselves, I believe that we need the office space. Sometimes we just get too bored or just feeling mental health is pretty important, I could say. And once a while or twice a while, we still need the office space as well. Do you share the same view, Bianca? I mean, you guys must be working from home as well. Do you think you would like to go back to the office, or how important do you think it is?
Yeah, I think the reason why we could work so effectively, like when the circuit breaker first came out, was because we already knew our co-workers. We were already, close and bonded, and it really helps when you're working remotely that you already have this connection. But say when, in future when we have new, like, Seng-Chi mentioned, new onboardings, it is truly challenging to actually onboard someone virtually. So for us, it's like a mindset shift for us. Like an office space, it's not really just purely for work alone anymore. It's more of a collaboration space, a space for learning, like so where we can bring some ideas together for teamwork, and for a place where new employees get to experience the corporate culture and feel that they are part of the team. So I think now it's really a different way of how we see an office space. But I still believe that it is important to have an office environment.
Yeah, I agree more. Do you share the same view as Louis?
For me, I feel that it's fairly circumstantial, right? There are a lot of different factors that you take into place on things like safety, health guidelines. But ultimately, I do believe that yes, certain employees who would be considered mission critical should be allowed to return to the office to perform their tools. Like as much as I'm an advocate for cloud solutions, I do know that there's a large number of companies out there who still have on-site servers that operate and they contain sensitive information. So it really depends on how mission critical the employee is. But otherwise, from how I viewed things, especially now that everyone has gone through training over the last few months, they're more used to the work from home environment. I think it is possible to basically have a hybrid rather than having a large proportion of the employees going back to the company. So, I mean, ultimately it depends on the company's specific situation and how mission critical those employees are.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Speaking of hybrid working model, working from home, working from the office, obviously the 3 or 4 of us here would have faced some challenges while moving away from the traditional working space to working from home as well. What do you think are some of the challenges that we faced initially, and how have we actually dealt with those changes? I think I'll start off with yourself, Bianca.
I think the most obvious one, obviously, is the tech. So like investing in like hardware and software. So like iPhone, internet telephone system, things like that. And the effort and time that we spend to digitalize like the processes and the historical records is definitely something that a lot of companies may feel, inertia to do. Yeah, but I think and we talk about tech and change. Definitely, we will have employees who are reluctant to change and resistant to change. But I think at any point in time, there will always be people who are resistant to change. And I personally think now is the best time because with all that we've experienced this year, employees will be, I guess, resistance level will be at its lowest because, just because of what we have experienced this year. So I think just to take Mazars as an example, now that we have decided to work, 50% of the time from home, we now know that it's no longer feasible for us to have a personalized desk. Like we can't, be spending like that much on rental if we continue to grow. So then what we have to do is to declutter and to depersonalize our work desk. And that was something that I think was difficult for us as well because it was like our identity. It was like our area and space in the office. But that was something we kind of we had to convince everyone that it's something that we had to do. Yeah, so then we have to move on to implement, a hot desk booking system, like guidelines, like to ensure that we continue to collaborate and to just prevent the misuse of the benefit that's given to us.
Yeah, I mean, personally as well, for me, when we back used to work at the office at one of the centers at Justco, and when we moved back working from home, one of the challenges I faced was obviously internet connection. Second one would be the traditional hardware that you mentioned as well. And lastly, a lot of disturbances, from family, friends, and dogs and cats as well. So I think some of the changes are quite, it was really a change. What about yourself, Louis? Did you face similar challenges as well?
I might go a different direction because for us, I think a lot of the challenges is the isolation and the lack of social interaction. Our company is fairly young, and a number of our employees are, how should I say, they live alone, right? So I think it's really key. I mean, you do go to work for your job, but your company is sort of like your second family. Love them or hate them, right? And they're always going to be there, and that's the social interaction that you get most of the time as well. And the mental strain of isolation can really affect, a lot of the psyche of our employees. So I think that was quite a big challenge. I definitely faced that challenge in the early months of the coronavirus. I lived alone and I was basically at home alone for 3 or 4 months, right? So I think, and I think a number of our colleagues shared the same challenge. That was definitely one of the big ones for us. So it was up to emphasizing to leaders in the company that they do need to check up on their employees. They need to be able to spot signs of distress. And this is one of the big challenges that we faced. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, coming back to Sang-Chi, being the leader for the employee wellness as well, I'm sure you must have had a lot of Justco employees that probably worked from home initially and sort of, a shocker. What were some of the shockers or challenges you could say, and how did you deal with them as well?
Yeah, I think uh, I think I hear all the comments and I agree with all of them. It becomes very difficult when your living environment is also your work environment. Everything is kind of enmeshed together, right? So and all of us are different, and we each find our coping mechanisms. If we haven't found it yet, we definitely need to think seriously about how to find such a coping mechanism. So anecdotally, myself, the way I coped when I was working from home completely was I opened a drink at the end of the workday, right? Which might be 7 or 6:30 or 7:30, wherever it is, right? So I opened that can of beer, I pour myself that glass of wine. So that is my signal to myself that the workday has ended. So when we had the office, the signal was the commute. You put on your clothes, you go to the office, you are on the bus, MRT, taxi, whatever, and then the reverse commute happens and you have that ability to wind down and to check out. So I think if you're working from home, there are various ways, various coping mechanisms. One is put on your work clothes. Don't just lounge around in your pajamas the whole day. Second is do what I do, which is pretty enjoyable. Pour yourself a drink, right, to signal the end of the workday. I think those kinds of activities and rituals are very important for coping with working from home, because otherwise the onslaught is relentless. You can really suffer after a certain period of time. There's also one aspect of working from home from the company's perspective that most people don't talk about. You have a lot of comments early in the lockdown that productivity increased because you save on commuting time. People can be doing a lot more work during that 2 hours that you might be on the road. But that happens at the initial phases of the lockdown when you still have businesses coming in from January, February, March that you're following up on. When businesses begin to slow down, right, because that long tail of contracts has dried up, and you go into May and June, you realize that productivity is falling because there's no activity to keep you occupied. And when you have no activity to keep you occupied, that rhythm of trying to chase deals, trying to complete a task, trying to finish your job is lost when you are in a work from home mode, because there's no separation for no discipline for you to actually go out, sign that contract, chase that deal, meet that client. All of that is gone. So from the company's perspective, working from home can be very damaging in a slow economy situation. It's very damaging.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. Speaking of which, I was just going through some articles over at Tech Asia today morning, and I was just seeing Justco had launched something called Switch, if I'm not wrong. It's sort of pods. I found it really something, like speaking of mental well-being, I myself, probably if I feel a bit too dull at home, I'll probably log into the pod, wherever it was, the Switch. That was quite an interesting. Have you launched it across in Singapore, or are you planning to expand as well?
Yes, we have. I was trying not to go there because I don't want to sound like I'm advertising for Justco. But now that you brought it up, okay, so Switch is a digital application and a mobile app, right, for on-demand workspace.
Yeah.
So what that means is, number one, with the app, you can now access all of Justco centers by the minute. You pay only for what you use. You don't have to sign up for a permanent membership. That's the first part. Second part, you can also access other people's co-working spaces. We have partners in co-working who have put their products on our platform. So the base becomes bigger. And the third part is now we have what we call switch booths, which are basically the products that you referred to, Bhavesh. These are soundproof phone booth-like work booths. You can accommodate one person, or there's a 4-person model where 4 people can have a meeting in these booths. So we have 60 of these now rolled up across Singapore in both centralized CBD locations and suburban malls. So if you go out to North Point or Woodlands, which is, I forgot what point, that's North Point, I think. But a few of the decentralized malls, you will find these booths located there. And we found that the ones in the suburban locations have proven to be very popular for the very reason that a lot of us live in very tight living quarters with multi-generation families. And we may need that hour or 30 minutes for that very crucial conference call or that period of quiet work. What we also found, curiously, when we rolled out the booths was that people were using it for all other types of users. For example, you have people who are practicing music lessons in the booths. because their small flats are not conducive or they're disturbing the neighbors. So they bring their guitar into the booth and they start singing in the booth. You have people who take power naps in the booth after lunch. And it's cheap, right? Because the introductory price is $3.60 an hour. So you're very, very nice booth. You go in and you take a power nap in the booth and you're recharged at the end of it. So all sorts of use cases are popping up and we're very pleased with that.
Yeah, I think I myself am based in Jakarta. So if you guys happen to launch it in Jakarta, please keep us posted. I think I'll be the first ones to probably go for it as well. I think we've covered quite a bit about mental well-being as well. Speaking of which, I just want to move away to the topic of talent development as well as learning strategies, which is quite important as well. Considering everyone is working from home, we're still looking to evolve the employee workforce as well. I think I'll go with Bianca first. What are your thoughts about the new emerging trends for talent development, or probably training, you could say, for the next few months or years to come?
I think if we are talking about the next few years, more and more of the younger generation, so like the Gen Zs, will be joining the workforce. And internally at Mazars, we did a global HR survey, and we found that the younger generation actually valued learning and development a lot. And so for us, I feel that having a structured, or even it doesn't have to be structured, but having a training program and a pathway where employees know exactly what they can expect in the organization and how they would grow, I think it's a great tool to attract and retain employees in future. Yeah, I think even now, our generation, they feel that having like a training program, it's not just about the salary anymore. It's about, knowing and feeling that they are learning, that they are progressing in both their career and their personal development. So I think it's a very important thing, and it's very important for companies to focus on talent development.
Yeah, I think career development is quite an important thing for myself personally as well. Do you share the same view, Sengchi, or what are some of the career development plans or training programs that you run across at Justco?
I do, but I must confess that we do not have a very structured learning program, right? Because I think we're still pretty small. We have about 300 employees across the region. Number two, we are opening so many centers so quickly and introducing new products like Switch that we don't really have time to think about sending people for courses. But what we do focus a lot on is on-the-job training. Typically, we have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of, I won't call them problems, but new mountains to climb every day. And when we talk to our employees and when we talk to candidates, we give this as a value proposition for the new hire coming into Justco, that when you join us, you will not be short of challenges. And overcoming challenges and solving problems, that's the best way to learn, in our view.
Yeah, I think I agree more, especially on the mountain of problems part that you just covered. Speaking of problems, a lot of us have issues about the age gaps, you could say, in certain companies where we have older employees, and then we have the fast-growing startups where we cover a lot of younger generations as well. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of differences here and there. As an HR leader, obviously, it's our kind of role to cover these differences as well. How do you manage or align those differences to allow room and attention for everyone to work? I think we'll start off with Bianca.
Yeah, I think for us in Mazars, we don't really have that wide an age gap, to be honest. But even then, we do have, I guess, our own set of challenges, because everyone has their own working style, and that can lead to misunderstandings. So for us, what we try to do, even if it's just a simple thing like different people have different working hours, because of like their commitments at home, that they have distractions like, kids, that they choose to actually work later at night and then spend more time in the day with family. So what we do is that we just set core working hours. So for example, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is where everyone needs to be in the office, or not in the office, but at least contactable and working. Yeah, and then I think we have to be aware of the schedules of the people that we work with and be respectful of others like working hours. So just just simply not being offended when someone sends you an email outside of your working hour, because then it could be their working hour. So I guess simple things like this, really help to just reduce and eliminate all the misunderstandings that we used to have. Yeah, so I think it's just being more aware and being more open to communicate and discuss when things are not working out. Yeah.
Right. I think for Justco as well, probably you guys have a very young force as well, similar to HReasily. But obviously, based on your experience, Seng-Chi, you would have probably dealt with these sort of challenges probably now or previously. What are your thoughts on how to align these differences when you speak about age gap?
Yeah, I think Bianca raised a very good point. I think the issue of age or the gap between senior and junior employees, I think that's a secondary issue, right? The real issue is how do you bring a team of very diverse people together to collaborate and to produce what they are good at? And I think Bianca raised all of the points which are relevant, including, for example, recognizing what each employee is good at. So I know, for example, that I'm really bad at PowerPoint visuals, right? So my PowerPoints are all very, I would say, boring, right? So I can't do the kind of nice visuals that a younger person might be able to do. So I need to outsource that bit. And I need to be able to do that in a way to say that, hey, this is what you are good at. You do this for me. And then this is what the other piece that I'm good at. And I will do this piece and we can put together a nice product together. I think that's the first point. Second point is you need a lot of patience, right? Because each of us work in different ways and each of us communicate in different ways. So I might be a very straight shooter, very straight talker. Somebody else might be just very, very quiet, but he or she might be listening and trying to process what you're trying to tell that person. So you need to be patient. You need to try different ways to connect, different ways to empathize, different ways to build that relationship. So patience is, again, the second criteria. And then third, of course, is back to performance management. Do we know what we are here to do? What is the end game? What is the overall company mission, vision, and products? And how do each of us fit into that puzzle? So the performance management piece for me is actually a very critical part of bridging that gap between senior people and junior people.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more, especially on the first point you mentioned, knowing where we lack and then reskilling or outsourcing this work to someone else or someone junior or someone senior who's good at it as well. At least we could accept on the things we're not good at and good at as well. What about yourself, Louis? What are some of the challenges that you probably faced now or previously as well?
I think it's really about, for me, to understand the motivations behind an older generation person or younger generation person, right? Definitely, there are significant differences in their work schedule preferences or their goals at their stage in life. Maybe an older person is looking to just work and save for retirement, and a younger person's hungry. They're looking for advancement or career opportunities. So I think once you understand that, actually, that's mostly where the differences end, because motivations are actually very similar between the two generations. I think both would like to have good relationship with their managers. They would like respect from their colleagues. They would like to have a healthy work-life balance and recognition for job well done. So it's just really about finding ways that you can bridge gaps between the generations. And as my fellow panelists pointed out, you need to be able to bridge that gap. Perhaps you could employ certain tactics, such as maybe a company mentorship program or have an open door policy. Definitely foster a respectful atmosphere and have clear guidelines on how you should conduct it. And as a leader, you should also be leading by example. So I think it's just once you understand your employees' motivations, then you'll be able to see how you can bridge the gap and get the most out of everyone and just strengthen the team overall.
Yeah, I think performance management and communications would definitely help bridge those gaps as well. Lastly, for this evening, I just want to cover just a brief topic of, especially about, now we've heard about layoffs and cost reductions, especially for startups, as well as established firms as well. What are some insights you could share to our audience on the best way of handling such situations as well, especially now that, most of us, some of our companies have faced cost reductions. I think we'll start off with Seng Chi.
I'm sorry, I was on mute because I was trying to formulate an answer to one of the questioners. You're talking about the cost reduction exercise and the rationalization of business costs as a result of the COVID crisis. Yes. Okay. So unfortunately, like many companies, we have had to manage and let some people go in the middle part of the year. We try to think long term, and we try to think in terms of what is the critical talent pool that we need to have. Where there are slowdown in business activity, we try to be a bit targeted about it, and then just communicate the redundancies to the employees who are affected. And the important thing to do is, of course, number one, to be fair and to be equitable. And to adhere to the local laws, whatever is required of the company. So I think we need to be able to manage those carefully because people's livelihoods are affected. And of course, since we are disciplined about costs, we are hoping to re-emerge from the pandemic crisis a little bit stronger. And these employees who have been with us, they are always offered the first bite of the cherry when we come back into the market to rehire.
Yep, couldn't agree more. For the interest of time, I didn't even realize we're 15 minutes through this interesting conversation. We have a few Q&As posted by our audience. I think the first one, I'll take it up to Mazars. Hi, this question is for Mazars. I like how your company have worked from home even before COVID. Can you maybe share a sample structure of how Mazars learning and development program is like? Is it like an online course for the employees?
Okay, so our learning and development program basically consists of many different parts. So I think, first of all, being a professional services firm, we cannot run away from structured training. So we still have to continue training, and we do that virtually online. This year, we also focus a lot more on soft skill training, just because, you know, mental well-being, understanding our working styles is important. We also work with LinkedIn Learning. So employees actually have the option to learn whatever program that's available on LinkedIn in their own time. Yeah. So our learning and development program, because we are professional services firm, we also we basically have a structured career pathway. So in that sense, at every level, there is like a benchmark as to what you can learn and what you would be taught. So then, yeah, it's not just, so we do have like online and of course on the job training for employees.
Yeah. I think if the attendee would like more information, we could get in touch with Bianca post this call. The next question, I think like myself, we're all excited about Justco's expansion. I think I'll direct it to Seng Chi. Which country will be the next for Justco to grow its regional footprint after the expansion to Australia last year?
The next country to open in our business plan will be Japan. So we are working on the first center in Tokyo, and we have a couple more that we're looking at for 2021.
Yep, I hope it answers the attendees' questions as well. Okay, we have a pretty interesting question from one of our attendees. What will happen if I refuse to adopt new technical software for my company? There seems to be so many to choose from, and some are really very expensive. I think I'll get Seng Chi to go first. What are your thoughts about it?
I think nobody knows your business better than yourself. I think like the viewer pointed out, there are so many types of software that you can pick from. I think we need to be careful about what you pick and think about what is your biggest pain point, and then go from there. Is your biggest pain point payroll, for example? How big is your company? If it's not very big, then you can find a lot of cloud payroll solutions that might work for you. If your biggest pain point is operations management, for example, trying to configure the different parts of your manufacturing plant, then that's a pretty sophisticated problem which might require more complicated software.
Yep, I agree, same thing. What about yourself, Louis? Considering there's so many HR softwares in the market, sometimes budget is obviously the biggest constraint, especially with dealing with cost-cutting companies. What are your thoughts about implementing the right one here?
yet again, it harkens back to what Seng Chi said, right? You need to identify the pain points. But if you ask me personally, a lot of companies, it's like I said, they all recognize the importance of digital solutions and being able to operate on the cloud. And frankly, if you refuse, then unfortunately you may be left behind. I'm not saying you will be, but you may be left behind. You know, a lot of companies now, if you go into another lockdown, then your sales are curtailed. Then, you know, and you don't have an e-commerce platform set up, then you know, you're kind of setting up barriers for yourself, right? So I think that the ability of digital technology to allow people to work anywhere they want to increase efficiency, like for example, in like a HR solution, like a payroll, rather than spending your time on payroll, why don't you spend your time on upskilling your workers or ensuring that their their mental well-being is looked after, or drafting policies to ensure that you have an engaged and motivated workforce. If you feel that it's expensive, luckily you live in Singapore, so there are a lot of grants. So the Singapore government has provided subsidies of huge amounts over this year to ensure that you have the opportunity to try the solution you like, and make sure it suits your company. Identify what the pain points and take advantage of the grants that are available. This is the best way that you can try out different solutions. So if you're ever interested, give us a call.
I think I would like to direct another question to Justco, considering your exciting plans for growth. There's a rising trend on work booth, which has a different price range, from as low as $3.50 an hour to as high as $7 an hour, as determined by the building operator. How do you see this evolved in the near future?
We think it's the future of work. As I mentioned earlier in the session, I think the future of work as regards the space that you work is about putting together a fixed office, a flexible office, work booths, work from home, putting all of these options on the table for the worker to decide what task am I performing now and what task am I performing in 2 hours time, and where do I have to be to perform those tasks. Can you string all of that together on a platform that enables you to choose that in 2 hours I'm having a work conference call that I need quiet time in, I will go to this location and do that 2-hour conference call or something like that. And then in another 1 hour, I'm having a team meeting, and that happens more effectively in person. I'm going to meet my teammate in this other office, which I can gather with my teammates. So that's where we see the future going. Work booths are very popular in locations like Tokyo. They have very high adoption rates. We think that there's huge potential for these types of tools in Singapore and also in some of the other more concentrated and high density cities in Southeast Asia and in Asia.
Yeah, I hope it answers the attendees' question. Obviously, if you have more other questions regarding to Justco, like myself, feel free to drop by their center. They have a great community executive that'd be happy to answer any questions as well. I think I'd like to direct the next question to Bianca. There's a question here that says, can you guys share what kind of activities you hold now to create team bonding or engagement in your company?
Yeah, so I think we have created a lot of virtual events. So what we do in our department is we have what we call a fun team. So basically it's nominated people that they come together and they plan events. So what we have done this year, for example, was an online Halloween party. So we did things like treasure hunt, so like hunting for stuff at home. We also had, earlier this year during circuit breaker, we had a lunch together. So a virtual lunch, but we gave each each employee Grab food vouchers. So like digital vouchers where they can buy food, and then we just had lunch together and play games together. Yeah.
Right. I mean, going back to Justco, I'm sorry, a bit partial to Justco. I noticed that you guys previously used to have, before COVID, these marathons back in Jakarta and a lot of these monthly or weekly events. Do you guys have any sort of events currently right now, considering most of us are working from home?
Yeah, for our customers, all events have been moved online, like what we have now, a virtual event. What we discovered was a collateral benefit, unexpected benefit was we can now expand our events across our entire membership. all 25,000 people can elect to join instead of just a physical event where you have 20 or 30 people present. For Justco staff, it's become very challenging. We are an extremely personable company. We like to get employees together to go for drinks, go for dinner, go for lunch, do stuff together. So the lockdown has been very challenging. We try to do that in smaller groups in compliance with the law. And as soon as we enter a bigger opening in Singapore or elsewhere, we will go back to having these kinds of interactions with our employees.
Yep, I can't wait to get back on those member marathons, which I used to look forward to as well. I think that's about it from the questions from our audience. And I think we've probably reached the end of our webinar series for today. Firstly, I'd like to thank our panel of speakers for sharing some really insightful thoughts. Thank you, Seng-Chi, Bianca, and Louis. And obviously for our great audience as well for tuning in on a Tuesday afternoon today. We'll be also uploading this webinar recording on our website, www.hreasily.com/webinars. For those of you that may have missed out on any of the great content shared early on or probably join in later as well. Once again, thank you all for joining in. Have a great week ahead and stay safe.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mm.